Right. So, and we are on Facebook Live. Hi to all the ladies too in the Work Bigger community. So just from a technical perspective, FYI, I tend to switch back and forth from Zoom here and also the Facebook Live that we have going on. So if you see me switching back and forth, that's why. So with that, I'm super excited to be doing this call. And hi, Dr. Linda and Jamie. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you both. And hi to all of our attendees who are on. So feel free to pop any questions or comments in the Q&A or in the chat box. Again, so I'll just be going back and forth. I'll be checking all the questions, but let us know if you're watching live where you're calling from. So we'd love to keep these calls as interactive as possible, and also think about whatever questions you have as we jump into the conversations, and feel free to ask as you go. And again, I'll be jumping in back and forth. Maybe we'll save time at the end to go through all of your questions. But the way I see this is if you're joining live, this is really an opportunity to get some time with Dr. Linda and Jamie and to get all of your questions answered. So again, let us know where you're calling from. Give us a like or a love on Facebook Live. And then, yeah, we'll take it from there. So before we jump into the call and our conversation today, I'll share a little bit about Work Bigger, because I know we have a few people joining us who are new to the Work Bigger community. So Work Bigger is a career change and development platform. And our mission is to challenge the status quo and redefine work so that work is a vehicle for creativity, impact, and living an awesome life. It's really a platform about self-actualization and leveraging work to grow and really changing how we work too, because the way we work right now, I believe, is really broken. We offer community career resources. We have a website, workbigger.co, where we share a ton of resources around self-awareness, emotional well-being, mental health, career stuff as well, the more tactical strategic pieces, and also coaching for anyone who's looking to do work they love that helps them make a difference in the world, but you don't want to burn out. You want to do it in a more sustainable way. And what I'm finding just by building Work Bigger and this community is that creating community and safe spaces for women, for people to share, is a significant part of really moving on to that next level and growing. So having conversations like this is a big part of that, right? So that's really what we want to do here today, is leverage this discussion as a way to educate and also share struggles. So please feel free to, again, share a comment, share a question, anything that's coming up for you. And so on today's call, we have Jamie Meekins and Dr. Linda Savage, and I'm not going to go into a whole formal intro on them because I'm sure you've read their bios on the Eventbrite. But I'll share real quick that Dr. Savage is the author of Reclaiming Goddess Sexuality, and she's a psychologist who works with women and couples and has done a lot of work to help women heal from trauma. And I'll share that her book changed my life. I picked it up in February when I went to visit. Jamie and Linda in San Diego this year, and Dr. Linda handed me her book because I said to her, I'm really lacking some historical context on what was it like before the patriarchy? What did society really look like? And as I was reading her book, it really opened me up to so much, and I was able to understand a lot of the shame and trauma that I had experienced as a woman. Was not even aware of it. So really, really life-changing for me. And Jamie Meekins is Dr. Linda's daughter. She's a doula and birth expert. And she's also one of my best friends. So she works with moms during pregnancy and in the postpartum phase. And she's going to be talking about why the motherhood transition can be difficult for women. For me, Jamie has been an incredible resource. She was actually one of the first friends that I opened up to about my own motherhood journey. I really was not sharing a lot with my friends at the time, and we had incredible conversation that allowed me to learn more about what she's working on, and it's just been so valuable since then. So what I'll say is this call is inspired because, it's kind of I won't go into it too much, but this topic of motherhood has actually been really difficult for me to talk about openly. And I talked to Jamie and Dr. Linda, and I said, I really don't want to get emotional on this call, but it's such a personal topic for me. So though I'm really excited about it, there's been some apprehension. So I'll start off by saying that I absolutely love being a mom and a parent. It is something that really, really grounds me in my life, but I didn't prepare for that transition, right? I remember before I had my son, I would always hear how parenting was really difficult. I would hear, oh, it's so hard. Oh, you're in, like, your life changes forever. And that instilled a lot of fear in me. So I'm wondering, for anyone who's watching live, if you're feeling like that. I see that with a lot of women in the community and a lot of my friends who are thinking about becoming parents. There is just this fear that comes with it. And, you know, I just listening to that, I went in with, I don't want things to change. I don't want my life to change. I want this beautiful baby to be here, but I really want everything else to stay the same. So having big career goals really kind of added another layer of complication to that, because I didn't know, or I wasn't really processing, like, how do I now integrate this career side of my life with this parenting side? What does that even look like? And what is society, like, what is happening in our society within that conversation? I really was missing resources around that as well, and experienced a lot of guilt around it. So now my son is 3.5 years old, and I've finally given myself the space and the time to process my experience and to understand the parts that were challenging, and really think about, how can I grow through this? How can I grow through these difficult moments? And when Dr. Linda and I did our first call a few months ago, back in June, it was about what a fully realized woman looks like. And we talked about the 3 different phases of women, which is the maiden, the motherhood, and the maiden, the mother, and the crone. We didn't even cover the mother. And I feel like that was a little intentional, because it felt safer for me to talk about the maiden and the crone phase. But at the end of the call, Dr. Linda said, somehow we started touching on the motherhood phase, and she said, motherhood is surrendering to life. And that was kind of like, what? It kind of clicked for me in that moment, because I realized that the challenge, my own challenge, had come from just the resistance that comes with transition and change. So thank you. It's going to happen. I'm going to get emotional on this call. But if you're watching this on Facebook Live or in our Zoom, just let us know, do you resonate with that? Are you going through a transition period that feels really challenging and you have a lot of fear or resistance around? Because this is what I want us to accomplish on this call, to really talk about, how can we make that easier for women and for parents? I think men obviously play a big role with that. So with that, I'm going to jump to having Dr. Linda and Jamie maybe just introduce yourself in one sentence and tell us, why does this call resonate with you as an expert?
Jamie?
Dr. Linda, you go. Yeah. Okay, Dr. Linda, you go first. We're going to do this because I know there's 3 of us, but yeah, Dr. Linda, you go first, and then Jamie.
Well, first, I'm really pleased that you have this community work bigger that you've created, because women more than anything need support. And that's what I'm all about, is allowing women to discover their own feminine resources, not the resources that the culture offers, which are much more likely to be intense, work, and you have to suffer and you have to do all these things. And it's not surrendering. It's very different. And I do believe that even in the workplace, women can express their feminine selves, and they don't have to be like the men. So that's my start.
Thank you, Dr. Linda. And Jamie, what about you? Tell us just a sentence about you, and then why this call or the discussion we're having here today resonates with you.
Yeah, well, I'm not a mother yet, so I'm still learning, waiting for that to happen. But but I'm a birth and postpartum doula, so I'm really in it. And I've done a lot of work with mothers and people, about to become mothers. And this call really resonates with me because I see the trauma that happens with it. I see that women don't have enough support, and it's tough. And I really love the work that I do. And I feel like it's just a small piece of how I can help create a better community and society for women who want to become mothers. So thank you. Thank you for doing this. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, the call we had, I feel like it was maybe over a year ago now, Jamie. You and I got on the phone and I burst into tears, which is very typical. And I just shared with you, I was like, God, I feel all this resistance. I feel I haven't processed my transition. And you were just one of the most valuable resources as a friend, but also just the knowledge that you've been able to share with me. So I really would like to get into that today too.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
So one question that comes to mind, because I've been talking a lot now with my friends and with other community members about this surrendering, right? Like surrendering to motherhood. So Dr. Linda, can you share with us, what does it mean to surrender to motherhood? I had a friend, one of my best friends yesterday, who was a new mom. She asked me yesterday, she's like, what does that mean? So maybe can you share with us from your perspective, what does it mean to surrender?
Yeah, I actually got some people when I was writing my manuscript saying, don't use that word. The word surrender strikes fear in a lot of people's hearts because it got used to refer to, surrendering in a war, or surrendering to a powerful, person. And so it didn't mean good things.
Mm-hmm.
But in fact, in a more balanced culture, it really is an important initiation experience, not only for women. I mean, there's other surrenders that males can also experience, although, again, the training we have is not to let that happen. But for women, giving birth is a surrendering experience. Your body's going to do what it's going to do. And you do much, much better if you trust your body and you allow it, knowing that it knows what it's supposed to be doing. The baby and you and the body are all, in sync together in creating this birth. So that then begins to be a theme, which I felt very strongly around motherhood. Now, it doesn't mean you give up every aspect of yourself, although in the early stages with an infant, you really are in a symbiotic relationship. But I grew up in an era, I graduated college in the late 60s, and they literally told us you can either have a career or a family, you can't have both. And I went to a very liberal feminist school, but there was still that idea. And our generation went, screw that, we are going to do both. We're not going to give up because these were really highly educated women. So the working through, then we had the era of the supermom, which was not pleasant. Women were highly stressed trying to do everything, be Martha Stewart in the home and, an executive at work, which wasn't really a way to do it. So the surrender is a concept that through your life, you can allow yourself to play with, because it really is allowing the flow of life, whether it's as you're a mother or in many other situations where you trust your body to do what it knows how to do. The body has tremendous knowledge and wisdom. So that's pretty much it.
Oh, thank you. So you kind of hit on it. When you and I we were even talking separately, we're talking about surrendering, and you hit on it right now, right? The question that I always have, like, how do we surrender in the modern world? This is what I hear too from women. Does surrendering mean that I give up? And I think for women who are in high power careers or who want to be in high power careers, and this is the message that I got, so I can speak from experience. I would love to also hear from the women watching what your experience was and what the messages are that you're getting around career and parenting. I received messages that it was hard and that you can't do both. And it's really fascinating to hear you say, Dr. Linda, that's what you experienced years ago. And we're still kind of saying that, I think, to a lot of women. Or when we're saying that, okay, you can do both, this is a different time. But with that comes a lot of burnout and sacrifice. And what I think of is that, well, maybe that's because our society isn't really set up to support or value parents, right? And we see that. Yeah. And where I see it is maybe just in the design of our cities. Like there's so much conversation around breastfeeding and, oh, it's weird to breastfeed. And like somebody we're working with in Work Bigger right now mentioned in Sweden how family is very much integrated there into the lifestyle, into like the cities and how they're designed and how they make space for things like strollers. And, you know, maybe in our society here, it's a lot harder. So we're not receiving these powerful messages early on before we become parents. And it creates a lot of difficulty to surrender. And so that's been my experience. That's what I'm seeing. Jamie, maybe share with us why you see the transition to motherhood being difficult, because I know you're also bringing a very different perspective than Dr. Linda too with your work.
Yeah, so I see it from, the beginning, birth, and this is obviously the transition to motherhood. Speaking for people that are giving birth, there's other ways to become a mother, but this is my expertise, if you will. And I think there's three main parts to it. The first is the actual birth itself. And it's our society that we live in doesn't really, it's just like, it's like have your career, whatever, going along. And then you just think, okay, you're going to have a baby. And then you get back, like kind of what you were saying, you just like, your life doesn't change. And this is changing, but a lot of women still don't really prepare for birth. And birth is something that you need to prepare for. This is a huge, huge, huge thing that you are about to do. And it shouldn't be taken lightly. And the more you prepare, the more you figure out what kind of birth you want, the more empowering it can be. And what I see a lot is not that all hospitals are terrible, but with the hospital system, it's made birth a medical issue, and it's not. It's a very natural, beautiful process, and it gets turned into, okay, you need to come in, and we need to give you all these meds. You need to numb everything, and then only with our help can you give birth. And that's sad, really, for me, to someone who sees it a lot. And I think it starts women from the beginning of about to become a mother. It teaches them not to trust themselves, because you don't trust your body. You don't trust that you can do this without medical intervention. And if you need medical intervention, that's okay. It's more that you just know what your options are, and that you have choices, and that you are in control of your own birth. And then, if you decide that you want an epidural, if you decide you want a C-section, like that's fine. That's what you are, but you are making that choice. It's not someone telling you this is what you need to do because I know and you don't. And I see that it sets women up in a poor position, not only because the recovery is hard, but it sets them up not to trust their bodies and not to trust their intuition. And that sets you up for a harder transition to motherhood. And then the second part of it is postpartum. Postpartum recovery is a really, really, really crucial time for the mother to be cared for. And that often gets overlooked. Most of the time, you get sent back from the hospital and it's like, okay, good luck, you have a baby, and, goodbye. And then you don't get checked again until 6 weeks, which is those 6 weeks are crucial. And mothers just need more care. You went through this huge process, physically and emotionally, spiritually, like all the things, but specifically physical. It's a physical thing. Your body is changing. You need to recover. In birthing a baby and the placenta, that leaves you very open physically. And a lot of cultures around the world have very serious postpartum recovery protocol. Like they know that the mother needs to be taken care of. And there's, like what something that I've learned and I'm starting to offer to my clients is belly binding and giving the mother a bath and really caring for her, giving her nourishing foods and all these things. You're really caring for her. And so I just, can't stress that enough, that it's so important.
Yeah.
And then the third thing that I see is that birth is a rite of passage and it's not really treated as such. So like I've just talked about, you're going through this huge transition, huge process, and you're going through the initiation, but then when you come out the other side, the community is not really recognizing you for what you just went through. And that's what a rite of passage, that's the necessary component on the other side, is that the community recognizes you for what you've just went through and the wisdom that comes from that, and really treats you differently. And that's how mothers should be treated. It's like, wow, like you went through this initiation and now you're a mother, and fully embrace you in that new period of life. And that just doesn't really happen very often.
Oh, everything you're saying brings up either a memory from personal experience or hearing friends' experiences and stuff that they're carrying. So I have a follow-up question on the intuition, and I'd love to hear from, both you and Dr. Linda. Really, what does that look like, trusting your intuition as you transition to the mother phase?
Well, for me, I think it's about connecting to your body more. Mm-hmm. We're a very disembodied culture. And so with that, you need to do a lot of pre-work before giving birth to get back in touch with your body, do things like whatever works for you. Maybe yoga, meditation, whatever, working out, even just things that connect you to your body, because birth is a very physical process, and that's going to help your intuition because you're going to feel it more. The more disembodied you are, I think the less it's hard. I think it's harder to connect with your intuition. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's just what I see as a doula. My mom may have a different perspective.
No, thank you, Jamie. Yeah, Dr. Linda. And I know we covered a few, I want to say maybe tactics. We talked about like connecting to your intuition and body more. What do you recommend to help women connect to their intuition?
Some form of meditation to me is essential, basically, for a tool for life. And the idea of learning to surrender to your body can start through the pregnancy, so you can practice that surrender, which is a powerful tool, a very powerful tool. The thing about intuition and imagination, and they're kind of related, is that the culture has suppressed a lot of that, in the effort to suppress the feminine things that were considered weak. The idea of intuition, emotion, and all the things that go along with this kind of internal wisdom. So it's not a book telling you or somebody giving you a lecture. It's you tuning in to the inner self. That's not really encouraged, but we do have a huge influx of people offering meditation, and yoga does to a certain extent too, because it allows you to also connect with the body and intuition. And Jamie's exactly right. I mean, they are related, very related. So using your imagination, allowing yourself to be informed by what you picture or imagine, is a practice in intuition. And it doesn't mean you go around somebody on the street and go, hey, I just saw something in you and I need to tell you about it. It's more that you just practice it maybe with friends or people that are open, but that you also practice it with yourself. So if you have a sense of something, move in that direction rather than go, oh, that's just my imagination, which is what we're taught to do. Most people are told you're just a dreamer, stop dreaming, stop, and it's all negating a very powerful part of us. So that's my part.
Yeah, trusting your voice, trusting just that deeper part of yourself. You're totally right. We're not encouraged to listen.
Our inner voice, and that's often seen as not only you're not supposed to do it, but it's considered dangerous and associated with like negative stuff, which is really scary, that women are told not to tune into the most important voice they have, which is their own.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk about that a lot at Work Bigger. And actually, when this is unrelated, kind of, but even when we talk about career planning, right, and doing things like finding your mission, it's about listening to yourself. It's nobody can tell you you should go and do X, Y, Z. I think, society tells us that the answers are outside, but we really need to practice finding them within.
And I want to recommend a book that I just listened to a podcast with Carol Gillian, who's a wise elder now, and she's done research on women's voices. She wrote a book called In a Different Voice. And mostly she listened to girls that were between 9 and 12 before they were suppressed, essentially, and had to be girly. Not that girly is bad, but, there was this sort of pressure. And what they actually knew within themselves. And she said it was astounding that they had this inner knowing, and they could be very outspoken, and they really had a lot of themselves, and that began to shift. In fact, it shifted fairly rapidly between 12 and 13.
Wow.
So it's In a Different Voice. It's a great book. It's one of the classics.
Okay. I'll try to share that with everyone who's on the call too. Maybe Dr. Linda, I can get that from you after.
Sure.
I want to read a comment that came in because I think it's a really good one and we can all relate to it. Kristen says, I'm currently off work as of 6 months ago. I was a director of engineering with 12 years at a company. Now I'm a mom of 1.5-year-old and actively working on interviewing to go back to corporate or launch my own service, Crossroads. I'm the happiest I've ever been, and I'm extremely fearful of going back to where I was. Does anything come up for either of you? Like just this fear of going back to where I was? And Kristen, I wonder if that's going back to a place of stress or, I just think that's a comment that we can all relate to when it comes to the transition.
Well, I definitely see that what you're doing with Work Bigger is what's helping us going to make that transition, because you mentioned this kind of at the beginning that work is the way that it's set up right now. It's not really set up for families. It's not really set up for moms. And being a mom is a really important thing. You're not that everyone has to be a mom, but if you choose to be a mom, you are raising our next generation. And that's absolutely contributing to society. And so I think women feel a lot of pressure to contribute to society and go back to work, which I understand, but I think work is what needs to change, offer more flexibility, more remote availability, even, like choosing a career where you can bring in your baby, or being an entrepreneur or a freelancer where it's more kid friendly. Yoga Girl, I don't know if anyone follows her. She's amazing, but recently she had a post where she has her own yoga studio in Aruba, and she brought in her beautiful little daughter who was running around for the beginning of this retreat, and she got a lot of negative feedback, like, what is your baby doing? It's so distracting. And she was like, no, like Leia Luna, her daughter, offers a lot to be there. She's so loving and happy, and she brings good energy to people learning. And she wasn't there the whole time, just a little bit. But that was just a great reminder that, family is so separate. It's so separated, and it doesn't need to be. So it's hard. It's really tough. I totally understand the comment. It's hard to be in this really beautiful space of motherhood at home and then be like, oh, now I have to go back into this very patriarchal structure of corporate world. And I don't really know how to change that, but I think having conversations like these and the work that you're doing at Work Bigger is a good step.
What also comes up for me, Jamie, because you mentioned before the rite of passage and how birth is a rite of passage, and as how it's really important to recognize that when the woman is going through this transition, right, we're transitioning to parenthood, and how that needs to be recognized, and it's not recognized. So what I'm also thinking about Kristen's comment, it's like, okay, yeah, now you have to go back to the workplace, and this whole other side of you is not seen. And it goes back to, again, And I think whether you're a parent or not, the workplace today is where we don't really bring our full selves to work. We're actually talking about this in the meetup that we had this morning, how we don't bring our emotions to work, right? Where we have to have a certain facade. It's just very limited. And I think when you become a parent, you are dealing with that to an even greater degree. And it becomes really stressful. And I'll share, like, I remember after I had my son, I wanted like some recognition. So I was like, I just gave birth.
Yeah.
That was amazing. That was hard, but like, I'm really amazing. It was a really powerful experience. And I kind of like, I wanted something to kind of like recognize that, because it is so powerful. And yeah, I didn't have it.
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah. You want to be seen, and you deserve to be seen. You deserve to be honored what you just went through, because it's a really intense and amazing experience. It's unique. No one else, people do it every day, but it's a very unique experience. Giving birth is like, there's nothing, you can't compare it to anything.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell a story. When Jamie was about 6 months old, I had a all-day training I was doing for people who wanted to get their MFT licenses. So Jamie was fortunate to have an older sister who adored her and was old enough to be a sitter. And I had her and a friend come, and we were at a hotel, so they had a room right next to the room I was working in, and they took her out and they played and so on. But at some point, they were walking with her out, and people could hear her crying, and they were going to take care of it, and I knew they would. But there was a little bit of a consternation in the room, and then some woman stood up and she goes, "This is what we are all about," because we were all MFTs, right? Marriage and family therapists. And it was an amazing moment, because everyone in the room kind of went, "Oh yeah, right," But over the years, I've seen women, including myself, craft a way of doing what they are trained and good at doing, but in a different way. I don't have to show up at a place and sit in a box for 8 hours. And, some of the people become consultants. They create, as you're doing, entrepreneurial businesses. And I am amazed at the creativity of women to actually insist upon and create this sort of timeshare jobs and, remote ways and so on, but to actually ask for and insist that they can do what they do best in both arenas and not have to give up either.
Yeah, that resonates. Yeah, so much. It's women, asking for and creating those opportunities. I think that's why we see such a shift with the workplace too. There's a statistic, 2020, which is basically here, 40% of workers are going to be freelance. And I wonder what portion of that are women. And we're seeing so many women-founded businesses today. And I think it's because there's a level of frustration around just the limitations that we experience. I see Rachel wrote a comment, and I'm going to read this as well. And I'd love to hear what comes up for both of you. Rachel says, "As I'm listening, I'm wearing my 4-week-old to keep her from screaming bloody murder." I've been there. "This is my second child, and I think there is something to be said about all the celebrating self-care, intuition, everything you're talking about that's forgotten with your second." Wow, okay. People don't check in as much. Oh yeah, on you. Sorry, I'm like reading and I'm like nodding, because I can see how, from what friends have shared, how this happens. People don't check in as much on you, or they don't tend to stop and breathe, or have a good cry as much with your second. While I do find the newborn phase easier with my second, I know a little more what to expect and more relaxed with the daily care of an infant. I think it's so much harder keeping my sanity as a mom of two. So my sisters shared, thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing that. I remember when my sister had her second child, she also said, nobody talks about how hard it is to become a mom to 2 kids. There's a lot of conversations around the motherhood transition, or like your first, but it's true. Do you remember friends saying, it's like, oh, you're pregnant with your second, like everyone's kind of like, okay, like you've already been through it. So does anything come up for you ladies in terms of becoming a second-time mom and the challenges around that? Society-wise, what Rachel is saying is that there isn't as much support the second time around.
Yeah, there's a basic assumption that you know what you're doing. I mean, and even the first time wasn't all that celebrated. So, you know, again, it's the patriarchal setup. It's not really set up for nurture and connection, literally, even with couples. But, you know, the women's assume she'll figure it out, and women do. But you're right, things really need to change. And I love the closing of the bone ceremony Jamie's talked about, and that should be done for every birth.
Yeah. Can we talk about, Jamie, are you ready to talk about some of the, I know you did a training around Mayan practices, and we didn't talk about this before. Are you ready to share just some of the learnings that you've experienced through your training, and how, like, maybe with some of the women in this call, men too, men are invited, by the way, to this conversation. This is relevant for everyone. Just how we can leverage some of those tools.
Yeah, for sure. And just to mention Rachel's comment, I'm really sorry that is happening to you, because that is awful and sad. It is sad that the second child isn't as, it's like, oh, you're fine, like you've done this before. And I think a part of that is the lack of community that we don't have. It's so important to have, and it's just like you mentioned, like the way that our cities are designed, like we don't, live in these very family-centered villages anymore. But community is really important. And I would also suggest to hire a postpartum doula. I think a lot of people think it's an expense and, you don't need it, but if you don't have other people to care for you, that investment is really important to your health and well-being later in life. And that's really also what I learned in this recent training that I just did, which is one of the most amazing experiences of my life. I had the honor of learning from 3 indigenous women from Mexico what their postpartum care is like, and the ceremony that they do. And it's just so beautiful and amazing. And we just don't have that here. Even in Mexican culture, even if you're Catholic, even if you're, not maybe as connected to the indigenous side, they still know that belly binding is very important, which it is, like physically and emotionally. It's really important to bind your belly immediately.
What is belly binding?
It's so literally it's wrapping up your belly so that it's extra support physically. So even this woman who taught this training, she was saying, like, even if you have a C-section, the doctor will wrap you up before you leave the operating room. So it's like, even they just like know that is really important, and it helps with your structure, your bones, but it also just feels really supportive. That's a very vulnerable area after you've given birth, and to have it wrapped like that is just, it feels really good even if you didn't give birth. But so, because I haven't had that experience, but I experienced the wrapping and it feels really nice. So yeah, but the workshop, or the whole ceremony of closing of the bones it starts with a vaginal steam, and then you go into a bath and with herbs, like really amazing herbs that is chosen by the person who's giving the ceremony, very healing herbs. And then they actually give the woman a bath. Like, and when was the last time you were bathed? When you were a baby. And so it's really about mothering that new mother, because when you become a mother, so I've heard, again, I'm not a mother myself, but that's really a time that even though you've just become a mother, you really need a mother yourself. And so it's really beautiful. And there's a lot of emotion that comes out, even if you had the most beautiful, empowering birth experience, it's still really emotional. There's a lot of hormones pumping through your body. And so there's usually a lot of crying. After the bath, you get a massage, And then from there, they do a closing of the bones ceremony, or the closing of the bones part of the ceremony, which is literally they kind of wrap you in like a mummy, like with the rebozo. And so it's like spiritually you're closing your body because you've opened up so much. And physically because they're wrapping you up very tightly. And so you're closing that chapter kind of for now anyways. You can open it up when you have a second child, but they're closing your body. And then it's an abdominal massage to help the intestines. And then you do the belly binding, which is wrapping you up. And it's really amazing. It's hard to find. So if anybody has access to that after they give birth, I would definitely recommend it. It's really one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, just the way that the mother gets care and love after they've given birth. And yeah.
2 questions. What is the impact that you've seen or heard, right? Because I know you did this training recently, the impact that has on the mother. And then the other question is really for the attendees and the community members, like just what your thoughts are on these practices and as you hear about them. It's my first time learning as well. So
what is the impact of, well, long term, I mean, I'm still learning this practice, and it's a very sacred thing to do and to learn. So I'm trying to be very conscious of how I move forward in offering these kinds of things because it's not my tradition. But I am very honored to learn it and be able to share it. But because I'm still new, I haven't seen the direct impacts, but immediately the mother is seen. She's, like you just said, she's seen for what she has just done and physically cared for. I mean, I can't even explain express like how important that is to be cared for. And I've done it on somebody she was not a mother. And even it was so emotional for her just to have this done, and she hadn't given birth. It was a big emotional release and just so nourishing and loving for her. And so I can only imagine when it's someone who's given birth that it's even more than that. And I do know that physically it also is very healing and helps you support structurally closing of your bones. So you're going to heal faster physically from your birth when you have this kind of care, specifically with the herbs and the medicine that they use for that. It's very healing. And it makes the postpartum recovery easier, I should say.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to just read a couple of comments that came through, and I'm going to check our Facebook Live. Sierra. Hi, Sierra. Sierra says, love this conversation. Thank you, ladies. Then we have another comment from Michelle. Michelle says, I'm a mom of a 6-year-old daughter and a 4.5-year-old son. I'm also a wife and employee at a startup where I have a high demanding responsibilities. While I wish I could change careers, we are relying on the salary that I bring in. For women who are full-time moms, wives, and employees, and pearls for balance so that we can have it all. Yeah. It's just this, what I'm hearing from Michelle is just this struggle and pressure, right? To do it all. It's a lot. I feel like a lot of women carry that pressure. I felt it too, because when I had my son, I remember I wanted to start a company. And Jamie, I know you remember this. I started on that path, and I was also working full-time at the Associated Press. There was just a lot going on. And I believe at the time I was also the breadwinner in the family. So it's this pressure. I remember feeling like I have these responsibilities, and I also have my desires, and how do we balance them, really? So that's what comes up for me as I hear Michelle's comment. Kristen also says, I had a doula who got me through my natural childbirth in hospital. in the hospital. She also offered postpartum services with my contract, and I regret that I didn't take advantage of it. I did have a lactation consultant, but I wish I had gone through with the services of my doula as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen that happen a lot because with a birth doula contract, usually they offer at least one postpartum visit. And I think you get so caught up in everything that's going on that you're like, I can't have like another person like come into my house right now. And like, cause you're focused on your baby and you may be really stressed. And so I've seen that a lot, that they're like, don't really take that last visit. But yeah, I would definitely encourage women to do that if they have a doula.
What do you recommend in that case when you are so overwhelmed and tired and it's like you just can't deal with one more thing?
I would say just let that person come and help you, because that's what a doula is. I think it's just so uncommon that people still just don't really understand what a postpartum doula does. And it may feel like, oh, I need to take care of another person who's coming to visit, because you have people coming to visit, you have your in-laws, friends, family, whatever, that want to come see the baby. And so it feels very stressful because you have to sort of manage that along with trying to heal and take care of your baby. And so, but the doula they know what they're doing. They're not going to come in and like distract you. They're going to come in and be like, what do you need? And do it for you. So I would just say, take the help, even if it feels overwhelming.
Yeah. We have, thank you, Jamie. We have another question that came in from Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. I just saw your question in the Q&A. We have like the Q&A and the chat and the Facebook Live. So juggling a few options for questions. But Jennifer says, startup founder here, home with a 6-week-old. I think it's extra hard to juggle a baby with a full-time job where there's definitely no paid leave or leave at all. Any tips? Dr. Linda, sorry, go ahead. Either one of you.
Well, this is probably in the doula realm.
Well, and Belma, I mean, you've had a similar experience, so you might have better advice. I would, it's tricky. It's really hard. That's not very helpful, but I would say that though it feels like there's no paid leave and that feels really stressful, that you have to do it on your own, I would say that it's still really, really, really important that you take that time for yourself and just do it, because it's really important for the future of your health, the future of your child. It's going to make things easier, even if it stresses you out now. And I know somebody mentioned that they're wearing their 4-week-old baby. If you can work from home, wear your baby while you work. Baby wearing is really, really useful.
Yeah. So. No, and I will jump in here because Jennifer, I resonate with that so much. So before I started Work Bigger, I was working on another company called Bold. And at the time I did not have, it was a steep learning curve really for me being able to launch a business. I was also working full time, and my son was born. And what I decided to do on my maternity leave was to start working on my side hustle. And it was really, what that did for me is I didn't give myself time to rest. So I was really exhausted and I burned out really by the time my son was 10 months old. I was so beat. And my company didn't really get anywhere. We ended up shutting that down. I'm not saying that this is your scenario or that this is what you're doing, but I think to Jamie's point, really giving yourself some space and time. And in your case too, I understand when there's bills to pay, right? You may not have the luxury of taking 3 months or 6 months, it's a policy at some companies. So giving yourself some time to surrender, to rest, to lean into that experience, I think will hopefully allow you to move a lot more quickly with your business, because then you can heal. You can work from a place of health. You can work from a place where you are healed and where you feel taken care of. I think like what happened with me is that because I didn't really allow myself time to rest, that kind of ended up like building up on itself. And that's why I burned out. I didn't give myself the time to process. I wasn't very kind to myself. We had a meetup today on self-care. And when I was talking to the ladies, I said, when I had my son, I actually made a conscious choice. I was like, screw self-care. I don't need that. I'm going to like focus on my baby, and I'm going to focus on my work, and I'm going to like push through. And it was a very unkind way, I think, to be towards myself. And it didn't allow me to make an impact. So again, your scenario might obviously be very, very different, but I just share that because that was one of the biggest learnings that I've had being an entrepreneur and a parent. And I really think being a parent can really contribute actually to your entrepreneurial journey, because parenting, just like starting a business, is about growth, right? And how you grow with your child, how you work through the difficult moments. There's so much resilience that you experience when you become a parent. And that is very similar when you start a business. You have to be very resilient. You have to keep going. But I think you can only do that if you take care of yourself and if you're coming from a grounded, healthy place. So I hope that helps. But I feel you. I totally feel your stress there.
Yeah, we need more community of women, whether it's online or in real time, for every woman who's going through this, that she really has community support.
Yes, community is huge. I remember also feeling, again, to your point, Jennifer, and then also to the other ladies here who commented, Rachel, Kristen, Michelle, like that is what I was really lacking too. I didn't have a community of women who were working to, I don't want to say, I mean, there's a lot of working parents out there, right? But I think it's about finding the community that really resonates with you. I was looking for a community of women who can help me integrate these big business entrepreneurial goals or career goals with my big family goals. I wanted a space where I could share all of that and talk about it and be open about my struggles and be open about what was triggering me, all of that. So I agree. I think finding community and relying on each other. And now I feel like just being a part of groups with parents where you can share resources and talk about how to move through the struggles of the transition can be life-changing. So, and being open to that, really being open to share and to talk about your struggles. That's another thing that I didn't do so well. I wasn't open about my struggles. I said, I can just do this on my own, right? And it didn't serve me. So we have about 5 minutes left. I would love to hear from other members in the group, the women who are attending. And I'm going to check again here in our Facebook Live, see what other questions have come up for you ladies. Again, this is really an opportunity to talk through your own experiences and questions. I'm also going to share just some resources from Dr. Linda and Jamie. I really recommend her book because for me, it just helped me understand, again, like just the shame and trauma that we experience as women. And then Jamie's work as well. I'm going to share it here in the chat. But this is, let me know what other questions come up for you guys. I just shared a bunch of links in the chat.
I would also recommend, because it seems like there are a lot of moms who are postpartum right now, is a book called The Fourth Trimester by Kimberly Ann Johnson. And it's so thorough and amazing about postpartum care. So even if you're not immediately postpartum, I think a lot of it is really helpful. It's about yeah, it's about everything, every aspect of postpartum, really getting back into yourself and integrating that experience. It's really good.
I've heard of that book, actually. I've heard it's really, really awesome. So thank you for recommending
She's
that.
incredible. I love her. So
yeah.
Another
No, thank you, Jamie. Another community that I recently joined that I'm really excited about is Startup Pregnant. Really, really resonates with me. They have a podcast and they talk about parenting and entrepreneurship, but actually the women in the community are not all entrepreneurs. I know a few ladies joining here. Not everyone is an entrepreneur, and that's totally okay. Really, a lot of the conversations that go on in this community is around parenting and balancing work. So check that out. Startup Pregnant is a community. The founder seems amazing. She just had her second child, and it feels to me just like a really nice place to go to integrate conversations around work and parenting, and also how we can support each other as individuals and as community when society isn't necessarily set up to support us, right? So leaning into that more and more. Okay, so with that, Jamie and Dr. Linda, any closing thoughts on our conversation? Anything else you think our listeners should take away with them? Any other suggestions on resources? We can close it with that.
So I just want to say what may be somewhat obvious now is that women can make huge changes in our culture, especially if we are working together to make those changes, and especially those changes that everybody knows are really the right way to go. So family matters. We don't need to separate. These things are all things that women know, and we can make a big difference.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I would second what my mom said, and also just stress again for the women that are thinking about having children or having another child, from the birth perspective, just really consciously choose how you want to give birth and make that choice yourself, and then really pay attention to postpartum care. Those are just really important. So
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much again, everyone, for joining. I'll send a follow-up email with this call recorded if you want to listen to it again, and I'll share all of these resources. And Dr. Linda and Jamie, I can't thank you guys enough. Thank you so much for having this conversation and for just talking through all of these issues. I know they're big questions, so I really appreciate it. I'm so grateful for you both.
Thank you. I'm grateful for you. and my mom too. Thank you.
To everyone here.
All right, ladies, have a good afternoon and we'll chat soon.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.